Now this is the painfully true story of how Fork Parker teased, cheated, and lied to me. And I know what you're thinking. Right off the bat, Fork Parker's not even real? You're thinking he's just a fictitious figurehead of the CEO of Devolver Digital? Well, I swear to you, listener, that this happened, and Fork Parker is much more real than you could believe, than you could imagine. So it was about midday last week, and I was trying to work on my game, Warp Tech. And I noticed there was a strange old man with a mustache peering in through my window, as if he was trying to work out what I was doing. When I looked at him, he averted his gaze and pretended to be simply walking past my house. However, he was standing in my front garden, and such a disguise was rendered useless once he ran up against a bush and he was just forced to stand there. Still in my line of sight, I could see him just fine, but he was just standing still. So naturally I had to go outside, and I asked, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" I didn't really want to start a confrontation, but this erratic behavior was mildly alarming at best. He looked a bit confused, and he, said something like, "Oh, me?" And he gestured to himself as if I could have been speaking to anyone else, like there's nobody else there. But he was dodging the question, basically. He was trying to avoid speaking to me. He told me he was just taking a walk. And it was at this point I realized that he was wearing the Devolver Digital tag on his shirt, the Devolver Digital cufflinks, the Devolver Digital logo embroidered on each of his shoes, and a thick stack of Devolver Digital business cards were only just being contained by his pocket. So I had to verify that he was indeed Fork Parker, of course. I knew that he was a fictional character created by Devolver Digital, but this man was either the best cosplayer in the history of cosplayers, or I have misunderstood something fundamental about the nature of Fork Parker. So he said something like, "Yes, I'm Fork Parker, and I'm here for one very simple reason. I'm here to prove to you that you're onto something. May I come in and look at your game?" So I was kind of still confused as to why the fictitious CEO of a company that isn't near my house by any stretch of the imagination, the headquarters in like San Francisco or somewhere in America, it's not here. So I let him into my house. I had no other choice, honestly. So I led him through to my computer. But by the time I sat down at my desk, he was nowhere to be seen. Seemingly, he had disappeared. And I was beginning to believe that this whole thing had been a terrible spell of psychotic hallucination. So, I carefully reassembled myself, took a deep breath, and I ventured back towards the front door. Now, I could see Fork Parker there, although he was actually walking away from my house. It was difficult to see, since at this point he had created a fair bit of distance between himself and my house, but it did appear that he was holding a bundle of shiny objects. Suddenly, the thought occurred to me, Fork Parker only actually made it through my kitchen before, I stopped being able to hear his footsteps. I shut the door and I hurried back to my cutlery drawer, and I realized that son of a bitch made off with all my cutlery, and contrary to what you might believe, based on his name, Fork Parker, he wasn't after the forks. He did take the forks, but he also took the spoons, he took the knives, the pizza cutter, the tin opener, everything that you saw in a cutlery drawer was missing, even like the wooden spoons, which aren't even metal. And at this point, I resigned to the fact that there's nothing that can be done. I mean, who would believe me? Fork Parker, the widely considered fictitious figurehead of Devolver Digital, is stealing my cutlery? I couldn't even go to the police for this. He doesn't have any record. I felt isolated from the rest of humanity, for I possessed forbidden knowledge. And only recently have I really regained the will to function. Have I decided to reintegrate into society. But now I think that I need revenge on Fork Parker. I think I need to steal maybe his cutlery. I'm not sure. I didn't think that I would actually get this far. But I gotta do something. Maybe I'll throw stones through his window. Or I'll empty a bottle of water all over his front steps, so that his front steps look really wet and dodgy. And then nobody's gonna want to walk up them because you don't know what that liquid is. Just some real passive aggressive. Well, not even passive aggressive. That's pretty forward, but it's deep psychological warfare ostensibly. That's what I'm after. I want to initiate psychological warfare with Fork Parker.